Hey, it's Anthony Meisner with Land Title. I came to bring your Boulder County update for April, and let's dive right in. Kind of wrapping up the month of March, we really saw some major inventory increases, but at the same time, amazing buyer demand. So, as we've seen an 18% rise in under contracts, a little bit more solds than we saw this time last year, and this surge of inventory, we've seen to have this really active buyer's market and seller's market kind of all coming together and colliding at the same time. I guess the real question is, where's it taking place, right? Because not all of these markets are created equal. We have so many sellers on the market in the city of Boulder, right? 306 just in our detached market. That's really not that much up from where we were last year, but that's a lot of inventory, right? It's a pretty stable sized market. It's about the same size as Longmont. Longmont's got 100 less units on the market, but they're up 40%. So places like Erie, 57% or 56% increase over this time last year, but there is just a lot of inventory there. We've actually seen some real issues in that market because now we're starting to see so much inventory, even with the high buyer demand, we just can't quite keep up. And then you've got other parts of the market like Niwot, where we're actually down in inventory from this time last year, and places like Superior that are really low as well. Now, that's the detached side. If we get to the attached side, this is kind of the other end of the coin, right? Now, with Boulder specifically, way too much inventory in the attached market. 209 units on the market, 32% rise from this time last year. Erie, though, that's actually down 50% from this time last year. So there's a big difference between market to market to market. Now, Longmont has 77 units, but it's down from last year, and that's a very appropriate amount. One place that really has had a lot of attached inventory for a while is the Superior market, right? Not very many single family homes, but a lot of condo, townhouse type product out there that you can see. Now, if we look at it by month supply of inventory, this really tells you the important part. Is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? How balanced is it, right? Across the county, we're showing 3 months. I would argue that that's a balanced market right now, but the city of Boulder is operating at 4.5 months. That probably feels much more like it's in the buyer's favor than any of these other markets. So many of the county markets, really almost every single one of them, outside of maybe the city of Superior and detached, is feeling very, less than balanced, right? Sellers still have the advantage. There's not enough inventory on the market in some of these places. So as we're feeling that 2.5 months of inventory across most of these markets, that is really important, right? It's easy time to sell a house. It's springtime, right? This is a good time to sell usually. Now, if we look at the attached market where we get huge swings, Superior 6.5 months of inventory. You get Boulder at 4.5, very similar to the detached market, but these feel drastically different across the board. Really, even 2.5, 3 months of inventory in a lot of these other submarkets are feeling like we have an excess of inventory out there. And there's just not as many buyers shopping in attached right now because should be our cheaper buy or our more value product. And it just hasn't quite had the same value. So interesting things, right, happen where we'll talk about it from price point to price point here in just a second. Most likely, we're going to experience different speeds of these markets as well. Days in MLS right now, average is 52, but you got the fastest market in Lafayette in 19 days. So that market is cooking along just like the Louisville market, speed up 27 and a half days on market. Nice fast-paced market. New stuff coming on is turning over really quick. But then you've got other markets that are more that balance range, Boulder, Longmont, where 48 days, 53 days in MLS. So it's taking, almost a couple of months to get it under contract. And then you've got the other end of the spectrum where I told you Erie was really experiencing a lot of these headaches because of the more inventory. Well, it's just taking longer to sell homes. Not that they can't get sold, but they also are taking, quite a bit more concessions or lower price point or lower offers, right? So definitely different markets across all of these segments. Superior being one of those as well, similar to Erie, where enough inventory has created a little bit downward pressure there. Now, let's talk about price. Let's talk about solds and actives by price range, right? So I think by price range, the one thing that you can take away right away is lots of inventory at 3+ million, but we actually have a lot of people out there purchasing those homes. We had 14 sales last month. That's 61% year to date, up above where we were this time last year. So luxury is doing remarkably well. Over 1.5 million. All of these segments outside of 2.5 to 3 million have done really well this year. We're really struggling from 1 to 1.5 million on our solds. We're down 31%, but then if you look at that meat and potatoes of the market, that median of the market, 600 to a million, really stable with this time last year, a little bit down, probably more sensitive to the market, but there's a lot more inventory coming down at the lower end of the market. So massive amounts of inventory coming on. Buyers are just sticking with it. Now, with all the under contracts that came in, I think this is going to make a big difference on this. So you should see some really good sold numbers going into the month of April. Month supply of inventory and days on market, I wanted to break this out detached versus attached because at the lower price ranges, under 800,000, we have less than 2 months of inventory. It is absolutely a seller's market and it feels good out there if you're selling a home. Now, if you get up into the over 1 million range, maybe 1 to 2.5 million, it's going to feel a lot more like a balanced market, even leaning on buyer favored markets because there's a lot of inventory, even if there are buyers that are coming back to market in that place where we're seeing more activity, but there's just a lot to choose from. And then, of course, 2.5 million or more, 16 months of inventory, 13 months of inventory over 3 million, lots to choose from, but there are definitely people out there putting stuff under contract and there are buyers looking. So across all price ranges, best buttoned up houses, as always, especially with more inventory, are selling fairly quickly. And then it's like dragging the other product to the finish line. So we are seeing some of that elevate our days in MLS. If you look at the attached product, the luxury stuff, the stuff that's selling is selling very fast. Not a lot of it is selling right now. There's a lot of inventory above 1.5 million. You touch 1.5 million, we're at 13 months of inventory, all the way kind of up through that luxury condo townhouse price range. Now, if we're under, really under 1 million, we're floating around that 3.5 months of inventory, 4 months of inventory in many cases. So it's going to feel a lot more balanced in those markets. But submarket to submarket, this is going to be very extreme swings. Just because you don't have as many buyers out there, it is taking a while to sell them. We're talking 70 days in MLS, 60 days in MLS, 50 days in MLS as kind of your average. Now, let's get over to how this is affecting prices. Average sales price for detached single family. If you look at that trailing 12-month percentage change stat down at the bottom, you can see that I think stability is probably the best word for describing the environment the detached housing market is in. Now, there are a couple anomalies. We have Louisville, we have Superior, where we really start to feel that increase in purchase price out there. And the price is largely due to a lot of that stuff getting rebuilt from the Marshall fires and being sold at a higher price. So we're just kind of resetting a new normal. That'll all come out in the wash over the next year or two as, a lot of that stuff gets built out. But as you can see, I think stability, right? Erie is the one market that I would point out. So much inventory has been on the market. We've seen just a little bit of negative appreciation there. Now, if we look at the attached market, maybe the other cautionary tale, a lot of these markets have really seen a lot of downward pressure. Even the city of Boulder showing it's flat is probably actually feeling more downward pressure than it shows over the last 12 months. But we are seeing some negative numbers here, even if they are marginally negative. But, 3.5%, it can be quite a bit. Or if you're out in Superior where the new townhouses are competing with existing inventory, we have minus 9% out there. That's a very real feeling number. Longmont is feeling 8.5% drop in the attached housing market prices. So this is a very difficult one to navigate, but easiest way is to shoot it straight, right? We got to price really aggressively in those markets in order to get stuff sold because there's so much inventory that we're competing with. Now, if you want one to just kind of stick out there, talk about how is the market, right? Maybe the easiest slide to read that we put out, it's bar graph, shows you we did really well in March with all the other contracts coming. Expect April to look wonderful. But you can see submarket to submarket down at the bottom. Not all markets are created equal. Lafayette struggled a little bit to start the year. Erie and Niwot also struggled a little bit to start the year. City of Boulder struggled a little bit to start the year. But then Superior's up 21%. Louisville's up 45% because that's so much inventory. And places like Longmont have been flat year to date. So great news there. Now, if we look at our list of sale price, last slide I like to talk about, but the nice thing here is you can look at it by price range and you can really see kind of what your offers should be looking like and what they're coming in at across different price points. The other thing is we can see over the last 12 months some downward pressure where buyers are getting a little bit better deal. And it's because there's more inventory to choose from, even if there are more active buyers out there in the marketplace. 98.4% listed sale price, very, very similar to what we saw a year ago, but it's also really balanced, right? This doesn't feel like sellers are getting taken advantage of. Like if we're at the highest end of the price ranges, 3+ million, we're always negotiating on those prices, right? They're not quite so easy, set in stone. It's not lot and block homes where, we build 300 of the same type. That's just a little bit different. So we do see luxury stuff where there's less buyers, more competition, way more month supply of inventory, right? But in that median range, we're stocking 99% in so many ways. So definitely reach out if you have other questions or you need other information to help you. I'm Anthony Meisner with Land Title. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Catch you next time.